All right, so get this. We got sent this collection of like Q&A responses, supposedly from a time traveler.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. Named KFK, claiming to be from 2060.
Okay.
We're going to take a deep dive into these predictions and see what we can make of them.
Sounds fun.
I have to admit, I'm a bit skeptical,
Yeah.
but also super curious.
I mean, it's definitely interesting. What's immediately striking is the level of detail. Like, they don't just say there's going to be flying cars.
Right.
They're talking about specific geopolitical events, societal shifts, even the popularity of classical Chinese literature.
So specific.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with the basics. KFK claims to have traveled back to 2019,
Okay.
a year they describe as pivotal for humanity.
Interesting.
They even say 2019 is the subject of a nostalgic TV show in their time.
Oh.
It makes you wonder why 2019.
Yeah. Well, if you think about 2019,
Hmm.
it was a year of escalating global tensions, political polarization,
Yeah,
growing concerns about climate change.
for sure.
It's not hard to see how someone looking back might view it as the beginning of a turbulent era.
Right? Like the calm before the storm, and KFK doesn't shy away from describing that storm. They predict a global war erupting in 2048,
Oh, wow.
centered around a three-continent junction.
Hmm.
They describe it in pretty graphic terms with bodies piled high and blood flowing like rivers.
That's a chilling image. And what's particularly unsettling is that they don't specify the cause of this war.
Right.
They just say it involves a clash between two major world civilizations.
Yeah.
It leaves us with this sense of looming conflict, this unknown threat that hangs over the next few decades.
And the aftermath of this war is pretty bleak, too. KFK says the global population plummets from a projected 8 billion in 2047 to just 5.3 billion by 2060.
That's a huge drop.
They don't explicitly say the war is the sole cause,
Right.
but the implication is pretty clear.
It's a significant drop in population.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the long-term consequences of such a devastating conflict. How would societies rebuild? How would the world's resources be distributed?
Okay, before we spiral into an existential crisis,
Okay.
let's shift gears for a moment. KFK also provides some pretty wild details about their personal life.
Okay.
They claim to have been born in Shanghai in 2020,
Okay.
which is pretty impossible if they're talking to people in 2019.
It's a paradox, isn't it? Traveling to a time before your own birth, it suggests a level of temporal manipulation that we can barely comprehend.
Right.
And it raises questions about the nature of time travel itself.
Yeah.
Is it linear?
Right.
Can you change the past? What are the implications of meeting yourself?
It's mind-boggling, and KFK even suggests that time travel is a privilege granted to a select few in their time.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of society in 2060 has the capability to send people back in time, and why would they choose to do so?
That's a key question. And if we look at the technological advancements they describe, we might start to get some clues. They talk about rapid fabrication technology for housing,
Oh, interesting.
implying that construction is incredibly efficient and perhaps even automated.
Wait, so no more construction workers?
Perhaps not in the traditional sense. They also mentioned that paper becomes a luxury commodity.
Really?
Imagine a world where books, newspapers, even handwritten notes are rare and valuable.
Wow.
It points to a significant shift in how information is produced, consumed, and valued.
I find that hard to picture, honestly. I love the feel of a physical book.
Yeah.
And what about money? Do they still use cash in 2060?
Well, they simply say the currency of their time isn't measured in kuai, which is the Chinese word for yuan.
Okay.
It hints at a shift away from physical currency, possibly towards a digital system, perhaps even some form of cryptocurrency.
That makes sense, given the rise of digital currencies today. Okay, so we've got futuristic housing, no more paper, and a cashless society. What else does KFK say about technology?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. KFK predicts that AI and cross-disciplinary expertise become crucial after 2030.
Okay.
They say robots are widely used in gaming by 2035 and mass-produced by 2038.
Wow.
I get this implantation technology replaces mobile phones in the 2030s.
Implantation technology? Hold on, you mean like chips embedded in our bodies?
Yeah.
That sounds straight out of science fiction.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But think about the pace of technological innovation over the past few decades. It's not entirely implausible to imagine a future where technology is integrated into our very beings.
Okay, that's a bit freaky, but I'll admit it's also kind of fascinating. I'm trying to picture what that would even look like. Would we still have screens? Or would we be interacting with information directly through our thoughts?
They don't go into those specifics, but they do mention something called interconnected sensory technology that supposedly eliminates language barriers after 2035.
Wait, no more language barriers? How is that even possible? Are we talking about universal translators or something?
It's unclear. Their description is vague, but it suggests a future where communication transcends spoken language, perhaps through some form of telepathy or direct thought transfer.
Hmm.
Imagine a world where everyone can understand each other regardless of their native tongue. It's a pretty radical concept.
That's a huge GE shift. And I can see how that would have massive implications for everything from global politics to personal relationships. But KFK also talks about something else that caught my attention, the end of internet censorship.
Oh,
They specifically mentioned the wall disappearing thanks to global Wi-Fi satellite coverage.
yes, that's a fascinating detail. It suggests a future where information flows freely across borders, a world without the restrictions and limitations we see today.
I wonder what that would mean for countries like China, which have historically maintained strict control over internet access.
Well, that's a great segue into our next topic, KFK's predictions about China's future.
Perfect. I'm ready to delve into that. Let's explore what KFK has to say about their homeland and how it fits into this larger picture of a future shaped by war, technological advancements, and societal upheaval.
So you shared these intriguing predictions about China's future. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what KFK had to say.
Well, one prediction that really jumped out at me was that China takes a nationalist path. It makes me wonder, in this future world ravaged by war and climate change, does China become more isolationist?
That's a great question. They don't explicitly say, but given the context of their other predictions, it's certainly a possibility. Imagine a world where countries are struggling to rebuild after a devastating global conflict.
Yeah.
Resources are scarce, trust is shattered, and nations might be more inclined to prioritize their own interests above all else.
It's a bit unsettling to think about, but it also makes a lot of sense. And KFK does mention that Shanghai remains a prominent city in China, at least until 2048,
Hmm.
while Shenzhen becomes less habitable after 2030.
That aligns with current concerns about rising sea levels and the vulnerability of coastal cities.
Yeah.
It seems even in the future, climate change continues to reshape the world, driving migration patterns and redefining the map of human habitation.
It makes you wonder what happens to those displaced populations. Where do they go? How do they adapt?
It's exactly. These are questions KFK's predictions raise, prompting us to think critically about the potential social and humanitarian consequences of climate change. And it's not just about physical displacement, it's about economic disruption, political instability, and the potential for conflict over dwindling resources.
KFK also mentions that Yunnan is relatively pleasant in the 2030s and Guizhou in the 2048s. Perhaps these inland regions become havens for those seeking refuge from the changing climate.
That's certainly a possibility. It highlights the potential shifts in demographics and economic power as certain regions become more desirable while others face increasing challenges.
But amidst all these drastic changes, KFK suggests that some things remain constant.
Okay.
They mention that doctors and teachers remain relevant professions between 2048 and 2060. It's almost like a reassurance that even in a world of advanced technology and global upheaval, there's still a need for human connection,
Yeah.
for care, for education.
I find that detail incredibly hopeful. It suggests that despite the challenges humanity faces, certain fundamental human values endure. The need to heal, to learn to pass on knowledge to future generations, these are constants that transcend time and circumstance.
It makes you wonder what the future of education looks like. With paper becoming a luxury, do classrooms even exist as we know them today?
That's a fascinating question. KFK's predictions force us to rethink traditional models of learning. Perhaps education in the future relies more heavily on digital platforms, virtual reality, or even direct knowledge transfer through the interconnected sensory technology they mentioned earlier.
It's wild to imagine, but then KFK also mentions this return to traditional Chinese culture in the 2030s with the focus on classical Chinese literature and values.
Right.
It seems almost contradictory to this vision of a highly technological future.
It's a fascinating juxtaposition, isn't it? Perhaps it reflects a longing for stability and meaning in a world that feels increasingly chaotic and uncertain. As technology advances at an exponential pace, people might seek solace and grounding in the wisdom of the past.
It's like a pendulum swing. We're constantly seeking balance between tradition and progress, between the known and the unknown.
Exactly. And KFK's predictions highlight this tension between embracing the future and holding on to the past. It's a dynamic that will likely continue to shape our world for generations to come.
Speaking of the future, there's one prediction from KFK that I can't stop thinking about, the year 2048. They mention it repeatedly as a turning point, not just for the global war, but for other significant changes as well.
Right.
It's almost like 2048 marks a dividing line between two distinct eras.
I agree. KFK's descriptions of the pre-2048 world focus heavily on technological advancements and societal shifts.
Hmm.
But after 2048, the tone becomes more somber, with the war's aftermath casting a long shadow over everything.
Like that prediction about robot marriage being legalized in some countries after 2048, it's a detail that's both futuristic and kind of heartbreaking.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the implications of that prediction?
Well, if the war and other calamities have drastically reduced the population, maybe people are turning to robots for companionship. Or perhaps it reflects a deeper shift in social norms and the definition of relationships.
It's a profound question. What does it mean to be human in a world where technology can fulfill our need for connection, for intimacy, for love?
And it gets even more complex when you consider KFK's statement that civil servants cease to exist after 2048. What does that even mean?
Right.
Does it suggest a complete collapse of government as we know it, or perhaps a radical restructuring of societal institutions?
It's hard to say for sure. KFK's predictions are often cryptic and open to interpretation, but they certainly encourage us to question our assumptions about the future and to consider possibilities that might seem outlandish today but could become realities tomorrow.
Okay, I need a moment to process all of this. It's a lot to take in. We've got global wars, climate migration, robot marriages, the disappearance of government institutions. It's like a kaleidoscope of potential futures all swirling together. It's overwhelming, isn't it? But amidst all the chaos and uncertainty, there's also a glimmer of hope. Remember how KFK talked about a spiritual evolution happening after the war? People turning away from material pursuits and seeking deeper meaning in the unseen world?
Yes, that part really resonated with me. It's like even in the face of unimaginable hardship, humanity finds a way to adapt, to evolve, to find meaning beyond the material realm.
Exactly. And it speaks to the resilience of the human spirit, our ability to find hope and connection even in the darkest of times.
All right, I'm ready to dive back into KFK's predictions. There's still so much to unpack, especially when it comes to their insights into technological advancements and the future of communication. It's striking as we delve deeper into these predictions how KFK weaves together these grand narratives of global war and societal upheaval with these smaller, almost mundane details of life in 2060.
Right. It's that blend of the epic and the everyday that makes their account so compelling. For instance, remember how KFK mentioned that the global stock market crashes in a single hour?
They said it happens during their youth, sometime in the 2030s or early 2040s.
Right. And they said people stop worshiping money afterward and shift their focus towards inner development. It makes you wonder what could trigger such a catastrophic crash. Is it a cyber attack? A cascading failure of financial systems?
It's fascinating to speculate. And to think this financial collapse, while devastating, becomes a catalyst for a shift in values.
Yeah.
Almost like humanity is forced to reevaluate what truly matters after the illusion of material wealth is shattered.
It's a recurring theme in KFK's predictions, isn't it? These crises, whether it's the war or the financial collapse, seem to push humanity towards a kind of spiritual awakening.
Exactly. It's like these events expose the fragility of our current systems and force us to confront deeper questions about our purpose and our connection to something larger than ourselves.
And it makes me think about that other intriguing detail. KFK mentioned that smart glasses implantation becomes a thing in the 2030s and changes people's lives. Is this somehow connected to that shift in consciousness?
It's certainly possible. Imagine a technology that could enhance our perception, expand our awareness, or even connect us to a network of shared consciousness. Perhaps this smart glasses technology plays a role in that spiritual evolution KFK describes.
It's like we're on the cusp of a whole new era of human evolution, driven by both technological advancements and these profound shifts in our understanding of ourselves and the universe.
And it makes those seemingly mundane details like paper becoming a luxury even more thought-provoking. What happens to our relationship with knowledge, with history, with art, when the physical objects that contain them become scarce?
Right. It's like KFK is suggesting we'll need to find new ways to preserve and transmit culture, knowledge, and memory. Perhaps through digital archives, virtual reality experiences, or even by directly encoding information into our consciousness.
It's a fascinating challenge. How do we carry the essence of humanity with us into a future that looks so different from our present?
And remember how KFK talked about communication technology evolving beyond the gene naming convention? They mentioned 7G emerges, but then something entirely new comes after 2048. It's almost like we can't even comprehend the level of communication that will be possible.
It's like trying to explain the internet to someone from the 1800s.
Right.
They simply wouldn't have the framework to grasp it.
Mm.
And maybe we're in a similar position trying to imagine communication beyond 7G. What would it mean to connect with others on a level that transcends language distance, even perhaps time itself.
It's mind-boggling, but also incredibly exciting. And I can't help but wonder if this advanced communication technology plays a role in that state of oneness KFK mentioned humanity achieving.
Ah, yes, that final cryptic prediction. Humanity entering a new phase after 2048 and ultimately reaching a state of oneness. What do you make of that?
Honestly, it's the prediction I struggle with the most. Is it a metaphorical oneness, like a global sense of unity and cooperation? Or is it something more literal, like a merging of consciousness on a planetary scale?
Perhaps it's both. Maybe we achieve a level of interconnectedness that blurs the lines between individual and collective consciousness. It's a concept that stretches the limits of our current understanding.
And that's what I find so compelling about KFK's predictions. They challenge us to expand our thinking, to imagine possibilities that might seem impossible today, but could become realities tomorrow.
It's a reminder that the future is not fixed. It's a canvas waiting to be painted by our choices, our actions, our collective imagination.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a mix of awe, trepidation, and a profound sense of curiosity.
And I think that's the perfect takeaway, to hold on to that sense of wonder, to acknowledge the potential challenges that lie ahead, and to approach the future with both open minds and a determination to create a world worthy of KFK's vision.
Exactly, because ultimately, whether KFK was a genuine time traveler or a master storyteller, they've given us a gift, a glimpse into a future that is both terrifying and hopeful, a future that challenges us to be more conscious, more connected, and more compassionate human beings.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll look back at this conversation and realize that we were the ones who helped shape that future. One choice, one action, one deep dive at a time. Thanks for joining us.